Today we are having a spoiler discussion on Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. I have played through chapters 1 through 4. I just finished chapter 4 the other day. So I just wanted to have almost like an update on my thoughts. It's been a while since my last video. It feels right to just kind of give an update onto what I'm thinking about the game. If you've been following my last few videos where I was making predictions on the game, and if you've played the game or seen spoilers on the game, you probably know that I'm going to be a little disappointed in where they have taken some of these characters. But alas, it's not all bad. We're going to get into it. I'm just kind of going to go chapter by chapter, talking about things I liked and things I didn't like. So let's roll the intro. Alright, starting off with chapter 1, I have here, we get a reveal of the mysterious construct taking the shard of the Master Sword. So that's actually the scene that the game opens up on. I actually watched that scene, I think it was the day before the game came out, and someone, you know, it's always going to happen, but someone just posted like the entire cutscenes of the entire game. And I was like, I was too invested after making all of these videos with predictions. I was like, I have to at least see a little bit of what's going to happen. I figure it's the first scene. I'm going to see it right when I play anyway. It can't be that big of a spoiler. And then lo and behold, it like actually shows the two characters I'm most interested in, right? The Construct and Calamo. So yeah, so what happens, they show a shard. They actually don't show whether it's past or future. When I first watched it, I thought this was in the future, like the present time where Link is, and I was like, man, they are really gonna just have this character just come alive and then go back in time. At least it's not that bad, but it's still, you know, I'm still not super happy with it. Essentially, the shard from the Master Sword that kind of you see cut Ganondorf's cheek, apparently Zelda teleports that shard along with herself into the past, and then in the past, where we have these constructs that are not awoken yet, that shard just happens to fall next to one of these constructs, and Calamo comes across it, and then you see the shard just kind of like swip and get pulled into the construct's core, and then, you know, that's when you have the Feist theme play, like we saw in the trailer long ago. And yep, Construct awakens like that. So I still think that's a little ridiculous. I mean, Link had the sword and the shard flew that way, Zelda's behind him and falls back this way, but somehow that shard ends up falling with her when the whole structure falls. It just totally doesn't make sense to me, but it's canon. I guess it's okay. I think they could have done a lot better. But anyway, I'm talking too long on this bullet point. If I keep doing this, the video is going to be like 2 hours long. We'll talk more about the Construct and Calamo later. I'm going to keep going, essentially a rundown of what's happened in the game. So next in the intro, because it shows like just a lot of cutscenes, just scene after scene, and they're not really paced super well, but it's still cool to see, I mean, really fleshed out cutscenes like this. So I liked them, but next we see Zelda meeting Rauru, you know, when she wakes up after going back in time. Sonia's there too, of course. And then pretty quickly after that, you get a scene where she meets Minoru for the first time, and it's cool because it's kind of like not the same scene you get from Tears of the Kingdom. It's kind of like a little longer, or I think it's like before that scene had happened. So I like how they did that. Like the scenes that we already saw in Tears of the Kingdom, instead of just showing us those scenes again, they just kind of like script them out. It's like, okay, I've already played it, so I get that. And then the scenes that they actually spent time rendering and stuff are actual new perspectives. So, well, that's fine. I love the dynamic between Minoru and Zelda. Okay, next, Zelda gets her sword. I thought it was cool that the blade is made of light energy, like a lightsaber. I thought that was super awesome. It's like the same Zonai swords. I mean, you've seen the box art. It's like the same Zonai swords you were able to use in Tears of the Kingdom, but they have like the light energy. And so like Rauru is using his light energy to power his spear, and he's like, here, Zelda, take this lightsaber. She's like, yes! And she's like, now I can use my light powers. So that was cool. I liked that. But I don't understand how she can all of a sudden just like make things levitate. Like, I understand she can manipulate time and like send things back, but like she can just make things levitate now, and I think that's just like, when did she get that power? I guess it looks cool. I'll give it that. It's got the cool factor, but a lot of this game is in that boat of like really not making a ton of sense, but having the cool factor. It gives me a little more leeway in my judgment because cool factor is always important. But still, just confused. Another thing I was confused about is that Sonya has a light bow. Like her arrows are made out of light power. And please, if you know why this is this way, tell me in the comments, because I like these games as a fan, but I'm pretty casual, and like I don't have Masterworks. I haven't watched videos that go over all of Masterworks. I didn't do the I didn't pay for the Switch 2 upgrades of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, so I haven't done any of that voice memory stuff. It just wasn't super interested in walking around Hyrule already when I had already put in like 400 hours into each of those games, getting all the Korok seeds and stuff, so I didn't really want to play them again just to listen to some stuff. But, so if you know the answer to this, tell me, but why does Sonya have a bow of light when I thought her power was specifically manipulation of time, whereas Raru's was the power to wield light, and then Zelda, being an ancestor of them too, has the both light and time powers? That's what I thought, so I'm confused why Sonya can all of a sudden use light arrows. Not that it really matters though, because you never get to play as Sonya. One of the big disappointments, I thought, because if the reason is that, oh, she's gonna like die after chapter 2, then just let me play as her until I get to chapter 2, and then for all of the story missions, don't have her as an option, but if I go back and replay missions, then have her as an option. So like the game already does that. Like if you do some story missions, you only have the option to select like either Zelda's team or Calamo's team. But then if you replay the mission, even though in that mission you were only able to use Zelda's team, for example, if you replay it, you can now use whatever character you want. So like it's perfectly reasonable for them to say like, here, you can use Sonya for like the first 2 chapters, and then after that, she's only kind of like a bonus character. Like you can use her when you replay challenges just for fun, but it's not going to be part of the story. Like, there's no reason they couldn't have done that. They already have like battle animations for her and like sync strikes with her, so just make her playable. Hopefully, this kind of goes for the whole video, but like hopefully she's like a bonus character you can unlock after you beat the game or something. We'll see. I mean, I still have chapters 5 and 6 to play, and then whatever extra content after. So for a lot of my negatives in this, they're kind of like negatives with a grain of salt, because it's like maybe something cool can still happen. So I hope we can play as Sonya at some point. But I don't think you're able to. Another thing here. No, I already talked about that. I already talked about Zelda meeting Minoru. And then she finally gets to the Great Plateau. You see the castle at the Great Plateau, and you kind of skip through Zelda's training. Yeah, so this kind of is along with all of those cutscenes that happen in the beginning. You just kind of like, it kind of like really hastily wants to get to the scene where Sonya dies. And so part of that is like, you don't see any of Zelda's training with Sonya. It's just kind of like flash forward and like, okay, now she can like use her powers really well. And then it's like, boom, now you're in your first playable mission as Zelda. Because she's gone through her training, now she can actually, you know, have a moveset. It's like a kind of way to explain why you can now play as her and she's capable. Whereas, like, if you were able to play with her at the beginning, you would be like, well, why is she able to have all of these strong attacks if she doesn't even know how to use her powers? So I kind of get that, but what it did result in was, like, the beginning feeling very, very slow because there's so many cutscenes. I didn't really mind too much, though. But something I was disappointed in was I really expected that we would have, like, a hub space being the castle on the Great Plateau. Like, I thought we would finally get to like walk around this ancient Hyrule castle, and a lot of this expectation come from my experience playing Fire Emblem Three Hopes, which is the Warriors game for Fire Emblem Three Houses. It's like the Warriors counterpart, and in that game you like set up a base camp, and you can just like, you don't have to be in a level, you can just run around as, I think it's Shez, you can just run around wherever you want, and if you want to like go cook to any of the amenities like cooking or mission select or upgrading weapons, like all of that, you can just like run to that place in the camp, But other than that, like, you're running around this free world. And I was really hoping, like, I would get to play as Zelda, as like my main controllable character in this hub space, and then when I want to select a level, maybe I go to like the war room and we look at the map, and then you can select your level, and if you want to upgrade weapons, you can like run over to the weapon shop or whatever. Like, I thought it would be cool to have just like a space where I can run around in like a Hyrule Castle, just in a space. I guess that is, I thought it was like a Warriors game, and just like Three Hopes just like added this enhancement, and now I was expecting all of the Warriors games to do that. But I mean, I'm not like a fan of these games. Like, I like them, but I'm not like a fan of them where I get every single Warriors games. I've only played Age of Calamity. I did not play the original Hyrule Warriors, and then I played Three Hopes. I did not play the original Fire Emblem Warriors. So I don't know what is like just normal to the Fire Emblem Warriors series versus the Hyrule Warriors. I don't know. But that was something I was disappointed in, mostly because of my own expectations. I really wanted to run around in a hub space. It is what it is. Would have been cool. It does kind of feel empty. I guess I'll like, if you've played the game, you've played the game. But like, you can see like all of the things that you do just kind of happen on this map space, which is cool because it's like an accurate representation of like Tears of the Kingdom map. But like, it's not really like engaging in that way because you just select it from here. You don't get to like run around for free. So it is what it is.
Another just like general thing that I thought was hilarious, just like a general gameplay thing, was like the way they label these missions and stuff is so like, I don't know who made these decisions. So you have like your main levels, it's under this like chapters category here, and it's like, okay, they don't call them main missions or anything like that, but like, you know, these are your main missions. They call them chapters. Okay, they're story missions. That's why they're in a chapter. And then you have, so those are labeled, you can tell because the icon has the double sword. And then you have some smaller missions that just have like the single sword. And you would think these are called maybe like side quests, since they're not main quests. But they're not called side quests. In fact, I don't think anything is called a side quest. But you do have in a side quest. Not a side quest, but in a side quest. Like, I put something aside. Like, I don't know who named them this. But then these aren't side quests. These are like just little challenges that you can do while you're playing. Like, while I'm playing, I can think, okay, while I'm playing as Zelda, let me try to make 2 perfect dodges. Just a little challenge for me to do. But they're called the side quests. But we also have challenges. But the challenges are not challenges. They're just... Oh, so these are what the side quests are called. So those need to be like flopped, in my opinion. And then the other thing you have are quests that are like not main quests or side quests. These are just little upgrades that you can make, which should probably be called not challenges, because we just went over the other ones that should be challenges, but these are just like little upgrades or something. I don't know. They shouldn't be called quests because you're not actually going on a quest. You're just giving them materials. So anyway, small thing, but it's funny.
So then, last few things here on chapter 1. We meet the Goron chief. He's like already friends with Rauru. He's not a sage yet. He's just kind of like the chief of the Goron people. And he's like, you know, we're going to have an alliance with Hyrule, so I'm going to be friends with Rauru. And because of their friendship, I think they're called envoys. The like leaders of each race are called envoys to Hyrule or something like that. And because they're friends, essentially, Rauru gives each leader of each race a mask to show this connection. And so that's where we get our big explanation for like why these masks look like the divine beasts from Breath of the Wild. They say that they are based off of sacred beasts. And Zelda's like, whoa, sacred beasts. And me too, I'm like, whoa, sacred beasts. But then like, that's it. Like, what does that even mean? Like, were there giant lizards? Was there a giant lizard and a giant camel and elephant or whatever in the far past of the ancient Zonai? Like, does Rauru just know this through text? Because he doesn't seem to know a lot about Zonai history. It's so weird. It's such a just like explanation out of your butt kind of thing. It's one of the things where it's like, I want to see this, not just be told it. And I haven't heard them come up with this or say anything related to this, like, after that. So that's, again, just one of those, there's going to be a lot of things like that, which are just like explanations we wanted, but just like not at all the way we wanted them. Last thing here on chapter 1, we talk about, or we go into our big mission into the depths. And okay, let me see what I wrote. We see that there are many humanoid constructs, like our mysterious construct. There's like a room with all of these constructs, and they see that one of them is missing. So we'll talk about the construct later. I've already kind of hinted at how I feel about that. But it is cool to learn that apparently like these constructs were responsible for like the near extinction. Well, obviously like Rauru and Minora are the only Zonai left. So like the ancient Zonai almost went extinct, and apparently that was because of these constructs that they made. Apparently they just went berserk and like just ended the Zonai people. So again, we're told this, we don't really see it. I wish we could see it. That's a video for another time. But that basically finishes up chapter 1, so let's get into chapter 2 next. Alright, so chapter 2 is where we get to see more of Ganondorf, and I think it kind of like bounces off of Zelda's experience meeting the Goron chief. What's his name? Agriston. So, she's like, well, how are your relationships with the Gerudo people? Hint, hint, hint. Like, and then that's basically their segue into showing us Ganondorf. And then we meet Artie. And so, that I think they showed the scene in a trailer or something, but like Ganondorf is essentially telling Artie like, okay, we're gonna go and attack Hyrule. And she's like, what? Why are you gonna do that? And he's like, and she's like, well, what about those of us that want peace? Like, what about the Gerudo people that actually want peace with Hyrule? And he's like, would you really go against what I'm saying? And she's like, no. So we'll talk more about Artie later, but basically this was actually a really cool thing. I like that they did this. So basically he sends Artie to go and attack Hyrule's castle during the Molduga attack that we see in Tears of the Kingdom. And so again, like this is one of the cool things about the game is like we've seen the scene with the Molduga attack, but now we see another perspective because we're getting Artie's perspective as she was told to essentially invade Hyrule Castle during this time. She gets, stopped, but Ganondorf uses that as kind of like his plea when he is trying to falsely side with Hyrule in Raru's Castle. Again, another thing we saw in Tears of the Kingdom. Now we see like, okay, he's basically saying like, yes, there were some Gerudo who wanted to overtake Hyrule Castle. Her name was Artie and her team, and we've taken care of them. We have killed them, which he actually did plan to do, but I think it was the Mysterious Construct. That's the first time we get to play as it. Mysterious Construct and Calamo essentially saved Artie from being killed by Kotake and Koeme. So, that was really cool. I liked that. A+. If I'm judging, I don't really have the right to do that, but I am. So, tries to kill her, being Artie. Claims to Rauru Artie was alone in the charge. Very cool. Okay. While seemingly aligned with Hyrule, Ganondorf makes his puppet Zelda very much like in Tears of the Kingdom to fool everyone. Yeah, and this game does that a lot. This whole thing with Zelda. So he makes that puppet Zelda, and it kind of plays out exactly the way it plays out in Tears of the Kingdom, where like everyone just buys it for some reason. Like they're a little bit suspicious, but like it's so easy for him to just do whatever he wants with these puppets. And that's kind of disappointing just because it's like, okay, I feel like I've already seen this. But whatever, that is how he gets into the depths and creates his own construct, or awakens his own construct. So, depths, the construct destroys all the others. Yeah, so basically, using the puppet Zelda, he's like, awaken using my gloom power, and then the construct like actually starts absorbing it way more than Zelda, or this puppet Zelda expects, and it kind of like kills the puppet. And Ganondorf's like, okay, whatever. And then it almost seems like it's got a mind of its own, and it basically destroys all of the other constructs, which I think was their way of explaining why we don't see this type of humanoid construct in Tears of the Kingdom by the time we get to that present time. Fair enough. But that's what happens there, and it is very cool seeing like having the like the hero construct and the evil construct. It's cool to have that dichotomy, and then that construct comes back into play during the scene where Sonya dies. Let me see if I have that as the next bullet point. Yep, that's my next bullet point. So basically, Rauru, now that Ganondorf has sided with Rauru, and he's just like, you know what, I want to keep a watch on him. I know I don't really trust anything he's saying, but if I'm close to him, then I can prevent anything bad from happening. So he goes on a mission with Ganondorf. Unfortunately, you don't really see Ganondorf like in the mission with you. It would have been cool if like he is maybe not playable, but just kind of like actually a character that you can attack and sync strike with. But you can't. And essentially, on his way back, once he realizes that Sonya's in trouble, he goes back, but he's stopped by this dark evil construct, the gloom construct, as I guess I'll call it. And that's why he's late and isn't able to save Sonya in that scene. So it's cool. It's kind of a cool perspective you get. And then what else? I put in my note here that we never get to play Sonya. I've already talked about that. Feels like a big miss. Yep, already talked about it. I don't see why they couldn't let you play. Blah, blah, blah. This is already how it works. Alright, I already talked about that. The last bullet point I have for Chapter 2 is that we see Ganondorf form his demon army, and he forms the 4 bosses. They're called the Archfiends. And okay, I guess right now is a good time to just kind of talk about them. I mean, overall, there's not really a lot to talk about them. They just kind of like, honestly, they're just kind of like worse versions of the bosses we see in Tears of the Kingdom. The only thing, like, honestly, they're not, like, the fact that they kind of look half humanoid, half monster, I actually kind of like that. Like, they're kind of like not fully formed. And I'm curious, I don't think this is the case. I think they are just kind of like based off of phantoms. Like, I think their humanoid form is maybe like that. It kind of looks like the skeleton version of Phantom Ganon, but some of them like are female, like Grim Gibdo's female. So honestly, it would be cool if Ganondorf was using some of like the loyal female Gerudo and using them to like create, like essentially like sacrificing their bodies to create these Archfiends. That would be cool. They haven't shown that, so I don't think that's the case. I think they are just kind of like made of gloom. But the worst part about them is just that their voice acting is absolutely terrible. Like, especially, I think Grimgera, the one based off of Colgera, is the first one you meet, and like he sounds like laughably bad. But honestly, none of them really sound good when they start talking. But luckily, they haven't played like a major role. They're just kind of like boss figures. So that's it for Chapter 2. Let's get into Chapter 3. Alright, so the plot really starts to slow down once you get into Chapter 3. Like, honestly, Chapters 1 through 2 just like flew by, but had the most, I think, like it's unfortunate because like Chapters 3 and 4 took me probably like 3 or 4 times longer than it took me to beat Chapters 1 through 2. But like the interesting information is kind of heavily pushed into Chapters 1 and 2. So like there was a lot more interesting things for me to talk about in Chapters 1 and 2, but Chapters 3 and 4 took longer, even though like less plot happened. Like I can basically summarize the plot in like a sentence. Basically, you meet the sages and stop the Archfiends. Like that's the plot of Chapter 3 and 4 combined, is meeting the sages and stopping the Archfiends. So there's not a lot of like things that happen. And yes, you get like cutscenes of them planning and plotting, but like none of it really feels consequential because it's not showing me anything new or unexpected. It's just kind of like, yeah, that's what I expect to happen in a war. I'm expecting you to go and find the sages and then, or not find them, but kind of like, I guess, collect them. So that's kind of what happens in 3 and 4, but I did put some bullet points here, so let me see what I put. With Ganondorf now as the Demon King, the war officially starts. The map really opens up here, and it turns red to show Ganondorf's influence. As you beat the missions, you can turn the map back to blue-green. So I think if you saw the map in the previous parts of this video, you'll see that it's like a mix of red and blue, or greenish color. and that's basically like the map's divided into segments, and you'll get like a mission in one of the segments, and it'll be like free this segment to like unlock the territory or like take control over the territory. And so that's cool because you see the map kind of grow, and then you kind of get missions as you play. You'll get a mission that like where Ganondorf's trying to take the territory back, and so you have a quick little mission to kind of like save it. And if you do it within a certain amount of time, you get a little bit of extra resources. So I feel like it's more gameplay focused in chapters 3 and 4, which honestly, rightfully so. Like this is at the end of the game, this is a game about a war, so it makes sense. Chapters 3 and 4, basically, I already said this. You help the Rito, or you have the Zora, the Rito, the Goron, and the Gerudo. We also defeat the 4 Archfiends. So I'm going to take this time. Essentially, I'm just going to talk about these characters instead of talking about like the plot of what happens. I'm just going to talk about the character themselves and what I think about them. So the first character I'm going to talk about is Kia, because that's the first one you really meet. Essentially, let me see. So the evil construct has killed the Zora King. And so now the young princess, Kia, is the new queen. She's the new leader of the Zora people. So unfortunately, you're not shown the event where the king dies. And that's kind of like, again, it's just another disappointing thing. I should tally how many positives versus negatives I put. But it's like, it's really cool meeting these sages, especially compared to what we got in Tears of the Kingdom. But it's like, I kind of still want more. Like, I'm told these interesting things, but I'm not, like, shown or able to experience them. Especially with, like, the cutscene capabilities that they've proven to have in these Warriors games. Like, I really wish our introduction to Kia would have been the battle where the king dies. Like, that would have been really awesome. So, unfortunately, it's kind of, this is going to happen with a lot in, as I discuss the game, but it's like, for every awesome thing that they do, like, the potential of what they could have done far surpasses what they ended up doing. So, this is one of those examples. But Kia, the princess, is now queen. She leads her people to safety with the help of Rauru and company. Rauru and Zelda go to try to help the Zora people. And that's basically the story of, like, you getting Kia. And so now, so before Kia, essentially, her father, the king, had that elephant mask, the Zonai mask. And so, along with saving Kia, Rauru offers her the mask and says, "You're the new leader, like, are we together?" And she's like, "Yes, I'll take it." So, that's Kia. Let's talk about her design. I have her pulled up here. And honestly, I think she has the coolest design of all the sages. Like, at first, I was like, what the heck is that horn? And then I'm like, okay, it hit me. I was like, okay, it's a narwhal. That's awesome. So we've seen like Sidon as a shark. I think Sidon's father, I'm losing the name, but he was essentially like a whale. So that was cool. I think one of the new characters, like Sidon's wife in Tears of the Kingdom, is like I think it was like a manta ray or a whale shark. I'm not sure. I think it was manta ray. So it's cool to see like different sea creatures, but this one's awesome. I like Kia a lot. Okay, what else do I put? Oh, and then in terms of gameplay, so she has a cool gameplay style because essentially she's imbued with water attacks, and so like if you have sludge enemies, the water helps clear the sludge. You can use a Zonai hydrant to hose down the sludge enemies, but Kia's attacks also naturally have water, so you can just use Kia and like use some combos that automatically shoot water. So really, really handy. She moves quick. She has like a cool wave that just like washes all, I think like 4 Ys and 1 X will like shoot out a big wave of water. So I like playing as Kia. Pretty cool. Next up, we meet Rafika. And we meet Rafika while doing Calamo's side of the story. So essentially as you play, like you have Rauru and Zelda's side of the story where you can play as those characters, but then you also have Calamo and the Construct just kind of like going around Hyrule. The Construct is kind of drawn to gloom, so it's going around and trying to stop all the things, and they're building up their own sort of B team, if you will. This is where all of those extra like Typhon, Kino, Cadlin, like all of these extra characters just kind of get lumped into Calamo's team. So, it's alright. So Calamo's team is there when we meet Rafika, and they have a history. Apparently Rafika like saved Calamo when he was trying to settle down roots, and then we hear Calamo talk about, again, for the millionth time, that he's trying to set down roots. Calamo's cool. We'll talk more about Calamo later, but my only complaint is that he kind of just seems like one-dimensional. Like, he's just trying to set down roots somewhere. But, yeah, basically explains that he's born from the sacred forest, as all Koroks are, and all Koroks will, like, set down roots, make a forest of their own. This is, again, we'll talk about Calamo later, but just what I just said, everything I just said, is basically just, like, again, the epitome of how I feel about the game right now, which is that it feels like they just took the lamest option, because obviously me talking about the sacred forest and Koroks already existing kind of leans towards Calamo not really being the great Deku Tree. But who knows? Like I said before, still have a few more chapters. We're going to talk about Calamo later. I'll try to stay out of that. But talking about Rafika, he's cool, he's pretty chill, he's like schemy, has all these smart plans. You can tell he kind of like, he's a strategist. He like thinks about things. I guess I should just turn to him. I don't really like his design as much as like the other Rito characters we've seen. Like the bird species that he is just kind of seems a little generic compared to what I feel like we could have gotten. And I don't really like the little like hair tunnel. Hair tunnel. Yeah, hair tunnel. Kind of looks like a wind tunnel, which I guess maybe that's the point, but I don't know. And then also he's just kind of black and white. It's just kind of like a little bland. I mean, Kia's kind of like a black blue, but she's got these like teal accents, so I feel like it's more forgiving with her that she's a kind of like a monotone color. But Rafika is just like white and black, so I don't know. I don't love his design that much, but I do like his character. And also, his voice actor is Joe's Yeha. I hope I'm saying that last name right. But he voiced Claude in Fire Emblem, 3 Houses and 3 Hopes. So it's hilarious because Claude is like a wind-powered, or like his element is wind, and he uses a bow. So it's hilarious how this voice actor is like now playing another wind-imbued, bow-wielding character. So I think that's funny. But that basically sums up Rafika for me. I think he's cool to play as. One of my favorite things to do with him is like his combo with using like Y 3 times and then strong attack is he makes like these 3 wind tunnels, and then you can just use like a Zonai, like a fire emitter or ice emitter or a shock emitter, and essentially like if you imbue wind with an element, then it makes like this like funnel hurricane looking thing, like a storm of that element. So with him it's extremely easy because I don't have to use the fan device and the emitter. I can just attack like a normal enemy, like I normally would attack, and then use that 3YX combo, and now I've got these 3 potential like wind tunnels to imbue with an element. So it makes breaking down tough enemies like really easy because I can do that elemental combo a lot faster with him. So yeah, I like playing as him. Next, we have Agriston, which we met first, but I have him on the list here because I don't think, like there's a specific scene where you go and help Goron City, and that happens in this order. Even though we've already met Agriston at the beginning, like in chapter 2, I think, this, essentially we go again. I think now you're meeting him as, I think Calamo's team and Zelda's team kind of meet in the same place. They're like right behind. I think the what happens is the construct in its bird form takes out the like dragon that comes out of the castle. Again, very much like Tears of the Kingdom with the way the story plays out. Again, one of the disappointing things is it's kind of like I've already seen this, but essentially the same thing Ganondorf did in Tears of the Kingdom, he did in the past too. He made this dragon come out of the volcano and then also sent the Archfiend. So you get to destroy that dragon thing and then fly somewhere else, and then Zelda's team comes and kind of helps the Goron people with the aftermath of that. So that's when you get Agriston, and basically he's pretty generic. I think Agriston's probably my least favorite. I mean, as a Goron, like there's not really a lot of variety you can do, But like between him, Daruk, and Yunobo, like he's probably my least favorite of the three. He feels almost like a watered down Daruk. Like he's just kind of like stoic, maybe a little bit wise, but other than that, like he doesn't really have like a personality, and you don't really get to see a lot happen with him. So yeah, he's probably the weakest one in my opinion, unfortunately. Like I liked Daruk was like the strong willed, like really fiery personality, and then like Yunobo was kind of like this whimpering child that was like, I don't know what to do, but just kind of had to figure it out. And then Agustin was just kind of generic. So we can move on from Agustin. Artie. We talked a little bit about Artie a while ago, but now you actually get to recruit Artie. Because there's some turmoil going on in the Gerudo Desert. I don't think it was the Archfiend. I think it was just a random swarm of Gibdo, but it probably was summoned by the Archfiend. But I don't remember or not if you actually see the Archfiend in that scene. But maybe. Who knows? I might be forgetting. I'm kind of doing this. I wrote these notes like a few days ago. I didn't write them as I was playing, so some of it might be inaccurate. I apologize for that. You can correct me if you want in the comments. I don't care. So, although Kia is my favorite like sage design, I think Artie probably has the strongest character moments simply because, I mean, it makes sense. Like, Ganondorf is closely tied with the Gerudo people, so you kind of have to give your Gerudo sage like a lot of the like character development, character growth. So they do, and I think it works. What do I put here? So yeah, she's conflicted a lot, like I mentioned in chapter, I think 2. She's conflicted when she has to like choose, like, am I going to obey Gerudo law and serve my chief, or am I going to do what I think is right and like not try to kill people? So she kind of has that struggle of, do I listen to Ganondorf or do I do what I need to do? Obviously she chooses to side with Ganondorf, and he betrays her, so that kind of lets her let loose and be like, you know what? I can take my revenge now. Like, you double-crossed me, so now I don't feel bad double-crossing you. But of course, Ganondorf's super strong. So, and at this point, he's already got the Secret Stone. I probably missed that. But at the end of chapter 2, you have the scene where Sonia gets killed. Like we saw in Tears of the Kingdom. They play the exact same scene. And so chapters 3 and 4, Ganondorf is already the Demon King. So all the stuff I just talked about with the sages, before they've become sages at this point, all of that is after Ganondorf is now the Demon King. But anyway, back to Artie. So she feels responsible for not trying to stop Ganondorf as she wanted to in the scene we saw in chapter 2. Like, instead of trying to stop him there where he was less powerful, she missed that opportunity, and now he's like almost unstoppable with the Secret Stone. So she feels regret, she feels responsibility, and I like that they show how she's hesitant to accept help from Rauru. She kind of feels like she has to do it all alone, and that's part of her arc, is like letting the other sages help her and like letting herself be a part of a team rather than trying to go solo. And then also, like, she then becomes the chief of the remaining Gerudo people who were betrayed by Ganondorf. And like, that is also something that she struggles with. She's not just like the hero that's just going to be like, yep, obviously I'm the main character here, so I'm just going to be the leader. That's how it is. Like, no, they actually show her being like, you know, can I really do this? Like, am I really the best person for this job? I guess I am. Like, let me try. So I like that she's hesitant about that. It kind of gives her some more character. What else do I put? In terms of like gameplay, she's probably my favorite to play as, even more than Kia, because it feels like her lightning attacks are super strong. And I love gameplay where you just mash the buttons. And so like all of her strong attacks have like, not all of them, but most of them have like mashing. So where like you can do like Y, Y, X, and it'll just do like one swing. But if you mash X, then you'll do like several swings, and each one will generate electricity. And so like every combo, like YX has a mash where it generates a bunch of electricity and then does an attack, or YYYX has a different electricity attack. And that's super useful, especially if you're around water, because then you can really imbue your enemies with lightning, and then you can just use like a flame emitter or another element to make an elemental combo and like like shatter their strong gauge in half. So she's really cool to play as, for sure. And so now you actually meet Artie in chapter 4. I think at the end of chapter 3 there's also like an attack on the Sacred Forest, and it's the ice one, Grim Gara. So he's like attacking the forest, and you just kind of stop him. No consequences there. There's another forest attack at the end of chapter 4 that we'll get to, but the beginning of chapter 4 is actually meeting Artie in the Gerudo Desert, like I just went over. And then after that, that's also the point where Zelda and Calamo's teams finally meet up. So up until that point, you're kind of playing those missions separately. If you're doing a Calamo mission, you can choose the characters that Calamo's team is lined up with. If you're doing a Zelda mission, you can only choose the teams that Zelda's characters are with in proximity. But now they finally meet up and become like one big team. So that's really cool. You get to see Zelda finally meet the construct. You see the scene where she's like about to touch him and she's like hesitant. The only reason she was really hesitant was because Rauru was telling her like, hey, watch out, like those constructs are evil. They destroyed the Zonai people. And of course, Raru's only experience with constructs is that evil construct that was there when Sonia died. So he's seeing like, do I trust this, like the constructs that we play as, or do I distrust him because those constructs ended my people? So that is that's kind of how that dynamic works. And I'll talk more about the Night construct later. It's probably the most interesting thing that maybe everyone wants to hear about, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it in a bit. What else did I put about chapter 4? Because I've already kind of summarized it. During this scene where they finally meet up with Rauru, where Calamo and the construct meet up with Raru's team, that's also where the construct gets renamed into the Night construct instead of the Mysterious construct. I don't know if in chapters 5 and 6 we're going to get another renaming, because I don't want to talk about this right now. I'm going to talk about the construct later. I'm going to get into it too much if I talk about it right now. But the rest of chapter 4 consists of sages receiving their stones and actually becoming sages. You also get them as like a special attack. You can use the stone of each sage as a special attack, which is really cool. Although I don't really use it that much, because then I don't have, like, it has such a long cooldown that then I can't use the other special attacks, which is like the one that breaks forward and the one that breaks a jumping enemy. So I don't find myself using the stones that much, but I probably should. They're really powerful. And then they imbue you with your element. So like if you're Kia, you use that stone, you do a super strong water attack, but then you're also imbued with water. And so all your water attacks are stronger for like another minute after you use your attack. So it is really powerful. Part of what makes the game so easy. And I'm not playing on the hardest difficulty, but I'm playing on the one right before that. Okay. Finally, the sages battle out the rest of the Archfiends over the course of several missions. Chapter 4 ends with the Sacred Forest being burnt down by one of the Archfiends. I think it was the Gibdo one. So, yeah, that was probably the most interesting thing from chapters 3 and 4, like, combined. The most interesting thing was the end of chapter 4. The forest is, like, burnt to a crisp. And so I mentioned earlier how, like, I was disappointed that there was a forest and there were already existing Koroks, because I'm like, man, we're 10,000 years in the past. Why does this world feel... Like, if you didn't tell me that this game take place... Not 10,000 years. Actually, it's more than 10,000 years. This game takes place, like, the far, 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 far past of this version of Hyrule. And, like, if you didn't tell me that, I would have believed that this takes place in present time. Because almost, like, nothing has changed. Or if there is, they have not shown us any interesting thing that would have changed. Like, we have not seen... Like, is there a Deku Tree? Is there a Master Sword? What is... I think in one of the scenes we see that, like, was it Dueling Peaks? That mountain that's, like, split in half? I think we see that it's not split in half if you look carefully in one of the scenes in Tears of the Kingdom or this. But, like, we never, like, actually have a scene where we go and explore that. And other things, the desert still looks the same. There's still the 4 races. We still have Koroks running around everywhere. I still have to find Korok seeds in this game. Like, it just feels so much like just any other version of this version of Hyrule. So that is extremely disappointing. But seeing the end of chapter 4 kind of gave me a little bit of hope, because the forest was like a crisp. Like, they showed several scenes of you like looking at the forest, and like the trees are like burning with red ember. Like they are done. Again, like I said a little bit ago, they don't show us a great Deku Tree. I have to imagine, if one exists, we don't really know, I would have to imagine it would have gotten burned down too if the forest is destroyed. But I don't know, because I also have several missions that I just did, like the little side missions that came up, that I'm playing in the forest again, and I'm just saving the forest. And like, you're playing and you just look like you're in a forest. It doesn't even look burned down. So I don't know. I really don't know if the forest is burnt or not. If it is, that kind of gives me a little bit of hope that something interesting might still happen with Calamo in regards to the forest. But honestly, like, with what I hear people talking about the game, and I'm trying not to actually see literal spoilers, but I still have heard people talk, I don't have high hopes that something interesting is going to happen. But we'll see. We'll get into it. But anyway, that's the Sages. And that, since we're talking about the forest, it's probably a good time to talk about Calamo. So, let's go ahead and do that. But first, a message from this video's sponsor. It's me. I'm sponsoring this video. I have got a book series. I'm illustrating these books in collaboration with my mother-in-law, who is writing the books. So you can see here, illustrated by Vince Ortiz, aka myself. Yeah, the series is called Most Kitty Co. And we've got 2 books right now. Basically, they just follow the adventures of my mother-in-law's hairless cat. So exciting stuff there, definitely aimed at kids. So if you're watching this and you don't have kids, you probably don't care. But if you do happen to have younger sisters, you want to tell your mom, hey, maybe this is a good Christmas gift or something, I don't know. It helps out the channel, I guess, because, you know, we're trying to sell these books. And the first book is called Cooped Up Cats, when the Mo is kind of trapped inside and wants to get out. But hairless cats, if they go outside, they get sunburn and, you know, get eaten by a hawk or something, I don't know. They don't let him go outside. So that's his adventure, is finally trying to go outside. And then we published this one last year, Christmas Cats. So this one fits right along with the holidays if you are watching this in December. So my art got a lot better in this book. I've got some notes on here for the 3rd book that we're planning, but I'll show you my favorite page. Right here, a spread of them running away from our dog Pippin. Actually, it's my sister-in-law's dog Pippin. So, cool stuff. I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. Alright, so now we finally get to talk about Calamo and the Night Construct. I wrote like half of an essay for Calamo and like a full mega essay for the Construct. So I'd love to just kind of talk about this off the cuff and that, but I'll probably get sidetracked. It's probably easier if I just read this verbatim and then talk about it from there. So for Calamo, I put... Alright, first off, he is awesome. I love playing as him. He has access to every single element in his base moveset, so it's extremely easy to set off elemental chains with him. That is true. So I think, if I'm remembering correctly, if you do like just X, you'll use wind attacks. If you do YX, you'll use lightning. 2 Ys and then X will be, I think that's ice. 3 Ys and X is fire. 4 Ys and X is water. And then after that, I think it's like a puff shroom or something. So it's super easy to just mix up all the elements. And then if you have like an enemy that's infused with fire and then you use another attack like water or ice, it like almost instantly breaks their strong gauge. And then if you have an element like fire, ice, or lightning, and then you use wind, then you can make those little tornadoes. So super fun to play as Calamo. And then just like the way he's designed, it's just like, he's awesome. Like, he's just so cool, agile. He's got the cool hat. It's definitely fun to play as him, and they definitely designed him really well. But now let's talk about the lore sides of things. I put also here in terms of his personality, he's kind of one-dimensional. He pretty much only talks about trying to set down roots somewhere to start his own forest, and that's like, it feels like every single line of dialogue he gets is just making a comment on that, so it kind of gets old. And that kind of leads me to the lore sides of things. So if you've watched my prediction videos, I was really thinking, like a lot of people, that Calamo would be some version of the Great Deku Tree. But at the beginning of the game, or like early on in the game, they show that the forest already exists. They show that there's already Koroks spread around Hyrule. As I mentioned earlier in this video, you have to find some Koroks in some of the story missions. So, I mean, I was just really disappointed in that. It felt, I've already mentioned this, but it felt like there's no difference between this old Hyrule and the Hyrule we play at in Tears of the Kingdom. So, extremely disappointing. But like I mentioned when I was getting to Chapter 4, the end of Chapter 4 ends with the forest getting burnt, and hopefully that does have some like actual implications on the history of Hyrule. Like, hopefully that actually means something. Hopefully it is actually burnt and destroyed, and that like plays a role in the story. Hopefully it's not just like the next chapter they just fix up the forest. And that also kind of gives hope that hopefully if there was a Great Deku Tree that got burnt down, maybe that does make room for Calamo to be that Great Deku Tree. There's still hope, but I don't know. I've tried to avoid spoilers, but of course I had a couple videos up, so I do see some comments talking about how all of my predictions were wrong. So, which is okay. That happens. But yeah, I'm just really hoping they do something more interesting with him. And I also put in my notes here that we don't meet the Great Deku Tree. Like, as of this Chapter 4 where the forest gets burnt down, I was thinking maybe we've already played 2 story missions in the forest. Why don't we see the Deku Tree? Why doesn't Zelda wonder where the Deku Tree, or wonder if there's a Deku Tree that might have wisdom? Why doesn't Zelda ask Rauru about this? Why? And then once they meet Calamo, a Korok, why doesn't Zelda ask Calamo about this? I thought maybe one of these missions in the forest, Calamo would like lead them to the Deku Tree and they'd get some wisdom or some advice. But so far that has not happened. I hope that happens sometime between these last 2 chapters before the game ends. But I don't know. I don't really have a lot of hope. But I hope they do something interesting with Calamo and he's not just like a random tree in Hyrule. He is, like, as a Korok, he is bigger than the other Koroks. So I feel like that does give some credence that he is a more important tree than just like a random tree in the forest. Which I do want to say, like, them adding that lore about how the Koroks go out and like form their own forests is really cool, because in Tears of the Kingdom, I only know this because in the depths, essentially, like, a lot of the treasure chests you found in the depths were like in hollowed out trees, and the depths were a mirror of the main level of Hyrule, right? So like you would see a forest and there was always like a big tree at the center of that forest. So now we know like that tree actually was a Korok, that is the main tree in that little forest, and then, you know, the little trees grew out from it. So it's a lot easier to see if you're in the depths than it is to see on the main map, but it's there, and so that's really cool to get a little bit of insight into that. But hopefully Calamo is not just one of those random trees. Hopefully he is a significant tree that actually has some meaning. But we'll see. And yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums up Calamo. So let's go into the construct. All right, everything that I talked about with the construct, the recording did not save, so we're going to try this again. Basically, I was saying, or I'm just going to read my notes. So a lot of the things I'm going to say about the construct are similar to what I'm saying about Calamo. So, at least so far, as of the end of Chapter 4, just like Calamo, the construct really steals the show. So, like, all of the mystery of Zelda's side of the story is non-existent in this game if you've played Tears of the Kingdom. So, like, you already know that Zelda's going to go into the past. You know she's going to train with Sonia. You know Sonia's going to die. You know they're going to get the sages to their side, and then they're going to fight Ganondorf, and Raru's going to have to sacrifice himself to kind of hold off Ganondorf. So you know all of that already going into this. It's the construct and Calamo that are really the, like, mystery and intrigue of playing this game. So anytime they're on, it's like I want to know what's going to happen. So they definitely catch my attention anytime they're on screen. In terms of character design, like, oh my gosh, the construct is just super awesome, okay? It's Robo Link. Like, it's so cool. We can use all of these Zonai devices to combine to them. It's got the cool hood and the tie or the scarf, which is kind of like a reference to the original Hyrule Warriors Link. So it's really cool. They definitely check off the cool factor, right? So like something can just totally not make sense, but if it looks cool, it's like it gets a pass. That is the construct in this case that saves it from a lot of the negatives that I'm going to get to when it comes to the lore of the construct, just like what I said with Calamo. So, what else? It would have been awesome if Tears of the Kingdom... Oh, I do put a note here that it would have been awesome if Tears of the Kingdom would have just gone all out into the past and just had us play as this construct instead of Link. Like, instead of playing in the present time as Link, I would not have minded if Tears of the Kingdom just did not include Link and just included this construct instead of Link. Personally, that's how cool this construct is to me. Like, I would not have minded that. So maybe in the future we can get a, like, non-Link version of Link. That would be extremely controversial. I don't think they would ever do that. And also, that's kind of a video for another time because I have those ideas already in my notes for future videos that I want to make in terms of like what games I want to see in the future for the Zelda series. But anyways, in terms of the story, we're going to start from the top. So the construct essentially is powered by a shard of the Master Sword. We see that Zelda brought it from the future when she fell after that encounter with Ganondorf at the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom. So this is hilarious because my first predictions video on this YouTube channel was titled, in talking about the construct, my video was titled, "It's not Fi, it's the Master Sword." So somehow that statement is actually true. It is not the spirit of Fi inside of this construct. It is actually a shard of the Master Sword. So if you've watched my video, you know that's not at all what I meant, but it is still hilarious. But you know that's not what I meant. The last thing I wanted was for some spirit or something from the future to just kind of come into the past and just happen to work out and be the explanation for this construct. So, I mean, they didn't do that spirit. Like, the biggest fan theory that I was not a fan of was the idea that Link was, like, the period of time where Link is asleep after losing his arm, but before you wake up on the Great Plateau, or the Great Sky Island, sorry. So there's a theory that, like, in between that time, Link's spirit was brought to the past by Minru or something like that. That was a big fan theory. And I just, like, I hated that. I just did not want some tiny time travel-y explanation for, like, Link to just be in this game. So at least it's not that bad, but honestly, it's still, it's probably just as egregious to say, okay, even though you saw the scene of Zelda coming into the past, we're going to say that that scene didn't really happen, and actually, this shard of the Master Sword also went into the past. Like, to me, it's almost as egregious. It still feels like a retcon to me, to be totally honest. But, I mean, I guess, oh well, I don't know. The biggest thing that bothers me, because, like, honestly, the fact that it's the sword, okay, I can get over that, and the fact that, like, we saw a completely different scene in Tears of the Kingdom than we do in the opening of Age of Imprisonment, like, I can get over that. But the biggest thing that bothers me right now is that everyone is addressing this construct, including Zelda, is addressing the construct as a he, because it looks like it reminds her of her knight. She's talking about Link, right? So she tells everyone this reminds me of Link. So they call it a he. And yet, like, yes, it looks like Link, it fights like Link. I don't even care about that part. Like, I knew it was going to be a Link fill-in, and that makes sense. Like, you can make that make sense if it's Fi's spirit that's inside of this construct. Then, like, Fi's only experience as a Master Sword is being wielded by a version of Link. So it makes sense that if Fi were piloting this construct, she would fight the way Link fights, because that's her only memory. So I can get over that. That's not a big deal to me. But if you've watched my previous videos where I give, like, the evidence, the scenes in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, They clearly state in Breath of the Wild multiple times that there is a voice inside of the sword. They never call it Fi, but it's a clear reference to Fi. And so they say there's a voice. They have scenes where Zelda talks to the sword and clearly understands the sword, even though as the game player, they just played the cliche, not the cliche, but just like the non-verbal Fi sound effect. But Zelda responds as if she's hearing actual words. So clearly Zelda can communicate with the sword. Then in Tears of the Kingdom, it goes even further. She actually addresses the voice in the sword as a female. She calls it a she when she's addressing the sword. So it doesn't make sense to me. If Zelda meets this construct at the beginning of chapter 4, she meets the construct and she realizes like, oh my gosh, okay, so a piece of the sword is inhabiting this construct. If she knows the voice, if she knows that the spirit in the sword is a female, why would she not address the construct as a female as well? It just does not make sense. And I was really hoping that there would be a scene when they finally met, that the construct would finally talk since it knew Zelda, and it would talk and reveal to Calamo like, whoa, you've been a girl this whole time, oh my gosh. So, oh yeah, you can tell by the way I'm talking that I'm really upset about that. And I'm upset because it doesn't make sense. I'm not upset because it's like clearly I had my own pool into this because I had my predictions, but I don't care if my predictions are right or wrong. What I'm upset about is that it just doesn't make sense. But I have to be balanced. Like I said, I am biased because I had predictions. If I had to give kind of like the balanced opinion to that, like the opposite side of that conversation, I will say that I think they try to explain it in a way that makes sense. So I'm going to explain what I understand after watching the scenes. I have not went and rewatched them, but just on a first viewing, this is what I understand. Rauru explains that the constructs, that they brought the destruction of the ancient Zonai, okay, they're locked away because of that, but he also explains that they kind of have like a sort of will of their own, maybe a sort of consciousness of their own, but that their core is kind of guiding their decision, maybe like their moral compass. So they have their own mind, but their core is guiding their path of what they're doing. And it doesn't make sense even talking about it, but I think this is how they try to explain it. I'm not saying it's a good explanation, but this is what I'm gathering. So essentially, the construct has a mind of its own, but it is powered by a source, and depending on the light or darkness of that source will decide its decisions. So, if you rewatch then the scenes where the night construct or the gloom construct awaken, then it does kind of make sense, because originally I thought the shard of the Master Sword was Fi deciding to go into the construct, but I think what actually happened was that the sword, Fi cannot literally move the sword, right? Or move the shard of the sword, but I think what happened is the construct pulled in that shard. So I had it reversed. I thought the sword went into the construct. Actually, I think the construct pulled in the sword, because it was the construct with a mind of its own that made that decision. Similarly, with the gloom construct, the puppet Zelda begins to put its gloom into the construct, but then loses control because the mind of the construct is saying, okay, I'm going to take all of your power, and then destroys the puppet Zelda. So I think that is what they're trying to say, and it makes sense now when you rewatch the creation of those constructs, or I should say the awakening of those constructs. But then again, my opinion is that that's a terrible explanation. Like, that's just a terrible way to set up the lore of these things, because it's kind of pointless. If they're going to have their own mind and their own consciousness, why not just have that be totally independent of gloom or the sword? Like if you didn't, like, you would avoid all this confusion with Fi and the spirit of the sword if you just said, hey, this construct has a mind of its own, it just happens to be a good construct, and then maybe there's another good construct that Ganondorf possesses, and that's why that one's evil. That would have been just as good and less confusing than what they do now, and get the same story points across. But instead, they make it this convoluted thing where even though we know there's a spirit inside of the sword, that spirit's not what is inside of the construct. This just doesn't make sense. So, I don't know. But like I've said with Calamo, there's still hope. I'm only on chapter 4. There's still 2 more chapters. There's hope that they can do something interesting with the construct by the end of the game. And we still haven't seen the sword. Just like we haven't seen the Great Deku Tree of the past, for some reason we have not seen the Master Sword in the past. Again, just like I said with the tree, I'm so confused why Zelda has not tried to look for this sword, especially now that she knows that there's the Night Construct. Why would she not try to equip this construct with the most powerful weapon, being the Sword that Seals the Darkness, which would exist in the past? It wouldn't be the sword that she got from Link. I'm not talking about that broken sword. I'm talking about the sword that exists in the past, that had to have existed at some point for Link to get it in Breath of the Wild. Like, there is a sword of the past. If you've watched my theories, you know that I thought this game would answer this question of the sword already existing, or maybe I thought we would create the sword, and I thought this construct with its AI consciousness would help create that sword and become the voice inside the sword, similar to how Fi acts in Skyward Sword. And again, if you've watched my videos, you know that I thought there was 2 separate continuities between the Skyward Sword timeline and the Breath of the Wild timeline. So, you know, you can watch those videos if you want a deep dive into those thoughts, but it just doesn't seem like they're going to do that, and I don't care if my predictions are right or wrong in that sense. However, I want an answer to where the Master Sword is. Like, I want an explanation to that. We'll see if we get one. So, this has been a long discussion. Thanks for listening through it with me, giving me a chance to talk about my thoughts on the game, and basically just to sum up the questions that I want before the questions that I want answered by the time I finish the game, and I'll make a follow-up video when I do get to that point. But number 1, I don't think they'll do anything further with this, but I want a deeper explanation onto what they're talking about with these sacred beasts. I think they're done talking about that. I think that's the extent of their explanation, but I want an answer to that. But more of the bigger questions, I want to know if the Deku Tree and the Great Forest are truly destroyed here after Chapter 4, and I want to know if Calamo is going to take the place of the Deku Tree. Excuse me. I want to know if a Deku Tree exists or not. And then, of course, I want to know what tree Calamo ends up being. I'm sure I'll get that answer, of course, but it's the Deku Tree that I'm more hesitant. I don't know if they're going to answer or give any comment on the Deku Tree of the past. Of course, they're going to tell me what happens with Calamo, but I don't know if they're going to talk about the Deku Tree. And then all of the bigger questions that I just finished talking about with the construct. I mean, I want to see if there is a connection between the construct and the Master Sword. I want to see if Zelda and her team will search for the Master Sword of the past and maybe have the construct wield the Master Sword at some point by the end of the game. That kind of seems like a shoo-in, unless the sword does not exist, which is my next question. Is there a chance that the sword does not exist yet in this time period, and the construct will hopefully play a role in creating that sword? Again, that kind of goes into my original predictions. And then also, I'm still holding out hope that the construct will speak in the voice of Fi's sound effect, and that everyone will acknowledge it as maybe not calling it Fi, but at least calling it a female, or maybe only Zelda can understand it, and then Zelda calls it, calls it her, like, oh my gosh, you're here, she's alive, or something. I don't know. I want some sort of reveal of Zelda realizing that the voice of the sword is inside of this construct, but I feel like that would have happened by now if it was going to happen. What do you think? Leave a comment. I will read these comments, maybe not until I finish the game, but part of this channel is just having discussions, so leave a comment. If you want to see more of my videos, go ahead and subscribe and ring the bell notification, because my videos will come out sporadically. I do have a full-time job aside from making videos. Like, this really is just for the sake of conversation and for fun. So if you want to get my videos, they're going to come out sporadically. Having that bell will make sure you see them when they do come out. And I think that's it. Yeah, I'm going to make another video on this when I finish the game. And until then, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers if I can. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.